what I'm going to teach you today is how you teach your horse to lead, how you teach your horse to pick up their foot, how you teach your horse to get in the trailer, how you teach your horse to do a leg yield, how you teach your horse to go forward, how you teach your horse to do flying changes. Pretty much any of those things are taught by using this recipe. Hello everyone, today I am going to teach you how to train your horse. I know this sounds really basic, but sometimes we forget the basic principles of how we teach our horse something. Also, if you're new here, hello, I'm Amelia. I post a new video every single Wednesday, and if you check out the description box, I have a ton of free downloads, including a test of your horse's ground manners. So be sure to check that out in the description box. So, first of all, how do we communicate with horses? So horses, obviously, we can't talk to them. I mean, we can use our voice and use verbal commands, but we can't speak to them in paragraphs and sentences. So we need to communicate with them in different ways, which can be pressure and release. It can be body language. It can be our intention. It can be the weight in the saddle. It can be the rein or the halter. Those are all ways that we communicate with our horses. And we want to have a meaning to every cue that we give our horse. So the way that we teach our horses to have meaning and to understand what we want from them is my magic recipe: aid, reaction, release, and repeat. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So I'm standing here, I've been talking for a while, and I want my horse to go forward. The aid that I'm going to give to get him to walk forward is I'm going to close both of my calves at the girth to ask him to walk forward straight. So watch here. Aid, reaction, he walks forward. Release, I release the pressure of my calf. So that was just a very good example of how I've trained my horse. And then I'm going to repeat it. So I'm going to halt again. I'm going to let my leg hang. I'm going to close my leg. Reaction, release, repeat. Now the sequence of that happens really fast. So like the aid, reaction, release ideally happens in less than a second. So watch again. I'm going to erase the chalkboard and just sit here and do nothing. Aid, reaction, release. So that's pretty fast, right? If it takes longer than that, so if you give an aid and your horse doesn't respond within like 1 Mississippi, I always say it should be like flipping a light switch. That's how quickly we want our horses to respond. And it's important that your horse responds that quickly for later on when you want to do more complicated things like flying changes. Your horse has to respond in a millisecond in order for the flying change to happen. So close my leg, good boy. Now let's say that you give an aid and nothing happens. It's always important that you start with the smallest aid possible. So I'm going to start always by closing my calf. I never want my aid to be my spur. I want to train my horse to my calf. So let's pretend, he's obviously being very responsive. You're a good boy, Jacques. But let's pretend that I close my calf and he doesn't go. Then the next thing that I do is I'm going to escalate my aid and I'm going to give him a little kick with my leg. Good boy. So you always start with the aid that you want, but then you have to do what it takes to get the reaction. So you have to get to the reaction part of the formula. That's super, super important, because if you give an aid and you're kicking and you're squeezing and you're kicking and nothing happens, and then you release, now you've taught your horse not to react. You've taught your horse to ignore the aid. Good boy. So going back to my little formula, a lot of things can go wrong. in my little aid, reaction, release, repeat. That's a really good thing for you to write down and remember. You can use the acronym R, A-R-R-R. We use that in my 30 Days to Round Challenge, which was kind of funny. But a lot of times when we're riding, we get so caught up in the details and we're kicking and we're pulling and we're doing all this stuff that we forget how important this very simple sequence is to training your horse. So, for example, what happens sometimes is our aid can become muddled. If I close my calf, but I also pull back on my horse, what happened? He backed up. That wasn't the reaction that I wanted, but my aids were not clear because I was basically squeezing but also pulling back at the same time. So my hands are overbearing the aid of my leg. So always make sure that your aid is very clear regardless of what it is that you want. Then the second issue is the reaction. So let's say that I want my horse to go forward. I close my leg, but I accidentally pull back and my horse starts backing up. And I'm kicking and he's backing up and I stop kicking and I take my leg off. Now I've rewarded the wrong thing. So I've rewarded my horse for going backwards and I've taken off the pressure. And this happens a lot of times is people give unclear aids and then they release the aid at the wrong moment. So they release when their horse throws their head up or when their horse goes running backwards, and then they think it's their horse's fault or their horse is being bad or naughty, when unfortunately it's probably your fault that you haven't been giving a clear aid, gotten the reaction that you wanted, and then releasing. The release is also a big problem. So for example, if I want my horse to go forward and I close my calf, but then if I just dig my spur into him like this, and I just leave my leg clamped on him, now he hasn't gotten any release for walking forward. And what happens now is that the neurons on his side just start to shut down. It's what we call neural fatigue. So it's just like the horse learns to ignore the pressure of the saddle. If you clamp your leg on your horse all the time, your horse just starts to think, oh, like her leg is just a part of the saddle, I should just ignore that. So the release is just as important as the aid, and that's really important to remember, that horses learn by the release of pressure. So if I want to trot, I get that, and then I push my heels down and I leave them alone. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this works for turning your horse. We've talked a lot about training your horse for the leg aid. The same thing can also be used for turning. So right now, I have two reins. My left hand is on the left side of my horse's neck. My right hand is on the right side of his neck. I'm going to trot down the rail. When I want to turn, I'm going to turn my shoulders. I'm going to open my left rein, close my right rein and leg, and he turns. So give an aid, get the reaction, release. Let me show you again. Turn, release. Turn, release. The turning aids are a bit more complicated because the turning aids are a combination of my outside rein and leg to turn and opening the inside rein. But it's still just as important that I get the reaction and then that I release. So it's turn, release. What I see happen a lot is people don't ever release the turning aids. So they're just doing this, turning, 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 turning. My horse isn't turning, and then they give up and go the other way. So what's just happened there? I've just taught my horse not to turn. I've taught him to ignore the turning aids. And unfortunately, we've all been there. We've done that once where you're trying to get your horse to turn and they won't turn, and you abandon and you go the other way. So you do that once and now your horse has learned that they get a release by not turning to the right. So it's always important that you are clear in your mind. Before I ask something, I have a clear picture in my head. So I'm like, okay, I want to turn to the right. I apply the aids, and then I release when my horse turns to the right. I apply the aids, and then I release. And what happens is that as you train your horse up the levels, things get more and more complicated. So for example, like riding a shoulder in or a haunches in or a flying change, the aids are a lot more complicated. But whenever things start to get muddled or you feel your horse start to shut down or get frustrated, you have to go back to this simple aid, reaction, release, repeat. You may need to go back to something more simple. Like, for example, if you're trying to teach haunches in, your horse isn't listening, you may need to go back to a leg yield, or even just go back to basic walk, trot, walk transitions to get your horse listening to your leg aid. So take this formula and keep it in your back pocket for the next time that you're having an issue with your horse. It's super important to understand that horses have a great memory and they learn through repetition. So you have to repeat the same aid, get the reaction you want, release, and then you repeat that over and over and over again. And that is how horses learn. The more consistent and clear that you are in these steps, the quicker you can train your horse up the levels. That's how, you know, the top riders in the world are able to train up Grand Prix horse after Grand Prix horse, because they're very clear in understanding this and giving the clear sequence of the eight. So I hope this video has helped you. Be sure to subscribe. I post a new video every single Wednesday, and my mission is Dressage for All, to help you out with your horse. Don't forget to check out the description box and download one of my awesome free PDFs, and we'll see you next week.